So I'd now like to introduce Rosemary Crawford, and Rosemary is co-founder and director of educational programs for the National Kitten Coalition and brings with her almost 20 years of animal welfare experience and expertise. She's a licensed veterinary technician, and her background includes serving as a medical staff member in animal shelters and private veterinary practice, as well as successfully implementing and managing progressive foster programs for shelter animals. Passionate about animal welfare and teaching others, she presents numerous sessions at animal welfare and veterinary conferences across the United States annually and teaches in-depth workshops on a wide range of proven ways to increase survival rates of kittens. Thank you, Rosemary.
Okay, hi there. Can everyone hear me all right? Hello. Thank you for that very nice introduction. Thank you for everyone's really warm welcome here to Australia. This is the first time I've been in Australia. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. And so I'm really appreciating how wonderful you've all been to me already, so thank you. I want to especially thank the G2Z Summit for having me as a speaker. I'm truly honored to be here. And especially to Nell Thompson, who has been just amazing to work with, and all of the planning she's done in the background to make this wonderful summit happen. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. See if we're working here. Okay, so the National Kitten Coalition, anyone? So yeah, we're not in Australia officially yet, other than here at the summit. Has anyone heard of us? I know we've seen some. Thank you. Yeah, we've seen some folks on our webinars. You'll hear a little bit more about us over the course of this, but it's really not about us. It's about what we can do to help animals everywhere. We are a nonprofit organization. We were officially founded back in 2008, but unofficially for several years prior to that. I had been living in Illinois, and I moved to the Northern Virginia area and found that many kittens, especially neonatal kittens, were just routinely being euthanized for lack of space, for lack of funding, for lack of training, especially for lack of foster programs. So I met a wonderful person, Susan Spalding, who lived in the DC area at that time too, and we just kind of got together and we started teaching people. And it just grew and grew and grew, took on a life of its own, and eventually, as we became national, we switched our name to the National Kitten Coalition in 2015. But our mission is to increase survival rates of kittens, and we do that through education. So we don't necessarily, as an organization, we don't take in or adopt out animals. However, all of our members work within their communities. We all foster for our local shelters and rescues. We work in shelters and rescues. We work in veterinary clinics. And so we are very involved with the actual hands-on, even though as an organization, our mission is to go out across the country and across other countries now, thank you Australia, to bring the education, the information to everyone that kittens, not just neonatal kittens, but kittens are savable. Neonatal kittens have their own special concerns, and we'll have some sessions later on about fading kitten syndrome, for example. But kittens in general, if they're healthy or they have an illness that is treatable and curable, they have a right to have a chance at life. So that's our mission there, our vision. You can see we want to make sure that everyone is given a chance to grow and thrive. And that's done through partnerships, it's done through working together within our community, and it's done through foster programs too. So let's go ahead and start talking about the foster programs while we're here today. So in this session, we're going to try to put a lot into a little amount of time. We'll look at some administrative considerations. We'll look at especially the foster caregivers, the foster parents. How do you get these folks? And then once you get them, how do you keep them? And if we're going to be helping all these extra animals, which we will be helping, I guarantee you, you will be helping more animals with your foster program, where are we going to get the funding for paying for all of that? So we're going to talk about all of those ideas, some creative options as well. First of all, how many organizations or people here, individuals within organizations, have foster programs within your groups? Great, 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 great. How many people are looking to be able to expand their foster programs, be able to help more animals, more people Awesome. Yay. Okay. So this is great. So if you are the foster program administrator, the foster program manager, great. If you are not, take in these ideas. Please bring them back to that person who might make some of these decisions, and we'll start helping more animals. So think about, first of all, what populations of animals you want to help foster. What population of animals in your shelter, in your rescue, are still maybe being euthanized because we don't have space for them, or maybe being euthanized because there's medical concerns or behavior concerns, or maybe it is the neonatal kittens. There's been a big move in our country, and we're thrilled that it is no longer the norm that neonatal kittens are euthanized in our country. It's the expectation now that we will start helping those animals. We will start these foster programs. We will find a way to say, yes, you have a chance at life, and no, you're not just going to be brought back and euthanized. So what animals do you want to help? And think about then, okay, who's going to manage the program? Many of the pitfalls we've seen over the years, some because we've been in organizations that have experienced these pitfalls themselves, but others because of hearing them from other organizations. One of the pitfalls is that a foster program initially might not be given priority. And if you're going to do it, it really is important to give it priority. We tend to wear a lot of hats in the sheltering community, in the animal welfare community in general, and you really need to have someone whose main hat is being the foster manager, the foster coordinator for this program. Yes, that person may be pulled to do other things because we all are, but really someone has to be dedicated in charge of that program. And we'll look at how it's going to be paid for a little bit later in the funding slides, and then again some other considerations that we can think about for potentially new and innovative foster programs. So the finding and recruiting foster parents. This used to be, I was a foster coordinator in 2 different shelters. One was a municipal shelter, one was a private shelter. And recruiting volunteers and fosters, in one way is easy because people want to help animals, but in another way it's kind of hard. And for a while I just dreaded it sometimes. I got my foster base, so why can't we just keep going? Well, people's lives change. Foster parents move away. They have other things come up in their lives and they can't continue fostering. So what does that mean for us? That means our base is no longer a stable base. We must always, always, always be recruiting more foster parents. So when I kind of did a little mind shift and I said, you know, okay, this isn't a chore. These are folks that want to work together. They want to work to save lives. How amazing is that? So kind of a little mind shift and looking at, it doesn't have to be a chore, and how can you make it interesting and exciting and, you know, just kind of a better situation and thinking this is a positive thing. And we'll talk about how we can do that in just a few minutes. So start thinking about who is likely to volunteer as a foster parent. Some organizations tell us that when they get foster parents, those foster parents had no idea that the organization even had a foster program. And they've been volunteering at the shelter for like 2 or 3 years. And they didn't, so do we have current volunteers who may also want to foster the animals? Maybe, you know, take some of those animals home with them who they're coming to help on a volunteer basis within the shelter. Who in your community might be interested or available to help additional animals? We think about, you know, our local shelters and rescues and the other rescue groups and kind of the animal welfare type people, but as even earlier was said, in animal welfare we can be doing other things, and similarly people in totally different businesses, totally different fields of work may very well want to foster, but they might not know the foster program exists. So start kind of just brainstorming who could be some of your volunteer fosters. And then we've got to do the community messaging. Like I said, some people don't know that the foster programs exist. So we'll look at some individual ideas of how we can do that community messaging in a slide all unto itself. So current volunteers, where are we going to get our fosters from? Current volunteers, that's a huge one. And then think about too your adopters. You have animals, or excuse me, you have people coming into the shelter adopting animals. They're going home, they love their animals. These people may want to do more. Perhaps you have something in your adoption packet for those new adopters saying this animal was a foster animal. And do you know what? You can help other animals. Yes, thank you for adopting. You've saved a life. Do you want to help us save another life? Do you have a spare bedroom, a spare bathroom that you can use, a little extra time and extra love that you are just wanting to help an additional animal with? So put something in your adoption packets, even if it wasn't a fostered animal that just got adopted, letting people know that the option is there. Retirees are a really up-and-coming area of foster caregivers. Retirees, as was mentioned earlier, the folks who have pets and they're in retirement communities, they love their animals. They just dote on them. So retirees might be an area that you might want to go to your local retirement communities. One of the things that we've found with retirement communities and sometimes with retirees, they're almost always excellent fosters, but sometimes there might be some mobility issues, sometimes there might be some issues of trying to, if they have to go somewhere with the animal to bring the animal for some medical care. And many groups have gotten around that by having a mobile service, or they have someone from their shelter or rescue staff be able to go to the retired foster and bring the service that the animal needs, if it's a deworming, if it's a vaccine, something like that, to that foster caregiver who might not feel as comfortable driving or be able to drive as easily. So how about people with flexible work schedules? I love that we're already hearing about finding housing for animals and housing that will accept people and their pets. Your realtor communities, your realtors who have their own work schedule and can come and go a little bit as they please, or they can schedule their appointments. Those are great, especially like for neonatal kittens that have to be fed 24 hours a day, every few hours. So maybe someone like realtors with that flexible schedule and different locations where they can maybe sometimes bring an animal with them to work. Many bosses are animal lovers too, and neonatal kittens, they don't take up much room. You can keep them in their carrier underneath your desk and go about your business for the day. So will the community, will the business be open to that and having their employers do that? Students, I have a question mark next to. This I'm talking about college students in general. What kind of ages do you guys have for your foster caregivers? Do you have like a 25-year-old as the youngest, or 21 or 18? So you can kind of decide what age range. Some organizations have great success with college students. They're off for the summer, they want to do something productive with their time. They foster kittens, they foster other animals. So I'm going to naturally default to kittens, and we're also talking, of course, about other animals as well. But others might become too busy with their own social life, and maybe the animal doesn't get as much of the care. You might have to work out your vetting process a little bit. It's really been a mixed bag that we're hearing from organizations all over. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great, and I think it really depends on that individual person who's fostering. Okay, so back to the community awareness. So you've kind of brainstormed who could possibly foster for you. How do we get the word out there to the community? So again, in your shelter and rescue, when you have people coming into the shelter to look at animals, they want to adopt the animals, do you have signs in your lobby that also say, hey, do you know what? We also have a foster program. Maybe you're not quite ready to adopt yet, maybe you're thinking about it. You can also help us help animals by fostering and having signs. Maybe it's a takeaway sign, like in that adoption packet, or maybe it's an A-frame sign on the floor. If you have off-site facilities, can you have information there, little flyers in a stand, again, posters. We have this foster program. We really need fosters. Cute pictures of kittens and puppies and dogs. And one of the big up-and-coming foster areas is for geriatric animals. And so they don't have to spend that time in the shelter. It's not, you know, sometimes they don't do very well in a shelter environment. So being able to have some of our senior animals into a house environment is really a great thing for them. So some really sweet pictures go a long way to helping advertise to the community. I talked about adoption packets already. Local pet supply stores. Again, can you put up a sign in the food aisle? Talk with the management. A lot of times they're great with it, and no one has just even asked them to do it before. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Come on in. You can make up a sign, have it pre-approved ahead of time, and go ahead and put it in the aisles where people are shopping. Of course, veterinary clinics. People are bringing their animals to veterinary clinics. They're bringing them, they're providing them with care. These are people who love their animals. These are people who want to take care of their animals. How about a sign in the veterinary clinics? Hey, can you help us save an additional life? Is there room in your home and your heart to save one more animal? And you know what? If you get a bunch, you know, even 10 people who foster a litter of kittens, 10 different litters of kittens, that's a lot of kittens that gets out of the shelter in the year. Likewise with dogs and cats and whatever that foster community is that you're looking to provide that foster service for. So how about, we didn't really talk about schools and libraries yet. Those are also great places, as well as coffee houses. Any of your popular places where people just want to kind of go and meet and kind of are within the community, get some signs out there. The school thing, so before I switched to animal welfare, I used to teach. And I could tell you, when the school year was getting close to drawing to an end, and the students were like, woohoo, 10 more days of school, 5 more days of school, and they're ready to get out of there, so were the teachers. But they're also thinking, what else, you know, we might want to do something this summer besides just take a vacation. So from a teacher, former teacher's point of view, I encourage you to send something to your schools about 4 to 6 weeks before the end of school. Please, can you put this in the teacher's lounge? You know, just a very simple little flyer. We need, you know, what are you planning to do with your summer? Do you have time to foster even one animal? And you can save a life this summer during your time off. And then remind them, because they're going to get busy with school stuff, and then remind them about 2 weeks before the end of the school year. So find out when your school year is ending for that particular school and send out another letter. And you might get 1 or 2 teachers, but 1 or 2 teachers might save another 1 or 2 pets during that summer break. The media outlets, of course, are really important. So of course we have social media. Have your current fosters, your current volunteers also spread the word to the folks on their social media pages. Many local communities also have cable TV and satellite TV where there's a certain amount of airtime that is dedicated to give for free or low cost, especially to nonprofit organizations. Do you have something like that in your community? Or your local radio stations or TV stations, will they give you a 20-second blurb for free or for low cost? A lot of people who run TV stations and radio stations or manage them have pets of their own. They get it. They want animals to be saved also. And what's 20 seconds of airtime for them? They probably have it somewhere. And a lot of times they're willing to just go ahead and donate that to your organization to help spread the word. Similarly, like with news shows, you know, an adoptable animal, have them say, you know, and also if you're not ready to adopt, we can also help by fostering, and put that little tagline in there. So for the onboarding and vetting process, you should certainly have some kind of vetting process when you're bringing your volunteers, your foster families on board. Something, you know, some application. There's a fine line that you have to kind of go between getting enough information to know about these people and like not getting too much that they're like, oh my God, 5 pages of questions, are you kidding me? And then you're gonna they're not even gonna finish it. Are you going to do a home check or not? Again, how many people do you have to make that available? How many animals do you really need fostering? So it's a little bit of a balancing act of how much you want to get into that process, that you might lose some people, but you might find out some more about them. Certainly there should be an orientation for your general organization, who you are, what you do, why you do it, and the general policies for your foster program, and have a manual available. It's nice if you can have a hard copy and an electronic version. Different, I mean, look at our room here today, different age groups and just different ways of accessing that information. Some people like to keep that printed version right there at their desk or next to the animal's area where they're being cared for, and others will just pull it up on their phone or their computer. So you've provided the general training, also then provide the specific training for the type of animal that they're caring for. If there's geriatric animals, the issues that the geriatric animals will be facing, or if they're medical issues, or if they're bottle baby kittens. Bottle baby kittens are far different than an adult cat, and they're far different than cats who can eat on their own. So there is some specialized training needed for some certain groups of fosters. And then having the clear expectations. This is something on both sides of the coin we hear and see over and over again in organizations, is the fosters are saying, we didn't know what to expect, or we don't know what to expect, or I didn't know that could happen. I didn't know that if my animal, my foster gets sick, that you might euthanize it. If foster parents know what to expect ahead of time, good and bad, there's a greater chance that you're going to be able to keep those foster parents long term. Because the last thing you want to happen is someone to have something unexpected and really turn them off from fostering in the first place. So keeping the lines of communication open and really being clear with expectations is very important. Okay, so why do we do that? Well, because the benefits to, of course, the foster animals, but also to your foster parents and to your foster manager and to your staff and your shelter in general. So it takes a bit of time to create that foster manual. It takes a bit of time to do that orientation and training. And while we're speaking about orientation and training, try to have those very frequently, every couple months, every month if you can. One of the other bad things that sometimes happens is someone wants to foster. They do the application. They're like, we're going to foster kittens. We're going to foster puppies. We're going to foster animals. And then they have to wait a couple months for the orientation. And then they have to wait another month or two for, you know, maybe an animal to come available, or if there's a home visit. And then things happen in their life, and they're like, you know what, we really want it to, but just can't anymore. You know, you've lost that window, so get them started right away if you're going to get them started. So back to the benefits. So of course the fosters, they have clear expectations and the confidence. So with whatever type of animal they're fostering, the confidence to know what they need to do and how to do it and why they need to do it is really important. So that's where the training is really important as well. For your staff, if there are questions, if you're the foster coordinator or if you're someone who's answering the phone and your staff is getting the same kind of questions over and over again, that's something really good to include in your training and in your foster manual so your fosters aren't asking those questions over and over again. So it will save them time, and of course the animals will be saved. So you've got them. How do you keep them? Your foster parents, your foster caregivers, you thank them, and you thank them, and you thank them, and then you thank them again. And you do it a lot, and you do it lots of different ways, and you be creative, and you cannot say thank you enough to your foster caregivers. Most people who foster don't want anything out of it except for an animal's life to be saved, but a thank you goes a long way. They also don't want to feel like they're just being taken advantage of or taken for granted. So be creative. You can do, you know, of course, handwritten notes in this day of electronics are a great thing. You can have little parties. You can have little swag sometimes. You can find out what they're interested in. And, you know, someone might be a coffee drinker. Give them a coffee mug. Anything you can do to just kind of thank them for their service will save more lives. They'll stay with your program longer and help foster more animals. The interactions, so virtual and actual, it's really nice to be able to talk with your foster caregivers in person. It's also really nice to be able to email with them, so take advantage of that. Some organizations have closed Facebook foster groups. where their foster caregivers can just get on that page. They can show pictures of their animals, who they're fostering. They create a sense of community within that foster Facebook group. And so that's kind of the individual and the group actions about fostering and getting your fosters involved within the community of fosters. Because unlike with volunteers who can come into a shelter and meet other volunteers, when you're fostering, you're at home at in your own locations, and so you don't get a chance to meet the other people as much. And to know that there are other fosters maybe going through the same kinds of ups and downs and the joys and the successes of having an animal become healthy again, or having an animal become old enough to be able to be adopted, and to be able to share those things together, even if it's an electronic virtual community, really helps to keep your fosters happy. So keeping them, let's also provide your fosters with new opportunities. The types of animals, so you might have someone who's been fostering 6 to 8 week old kittens. That's great, that's amazing. Maybe they want to try bottle baby kittens. Provide that training. Maybe they want to try behavioral kittens. We'll talk about taming tiny tigers later on. And sometimes fosters don't even know what other kinds of animals are out there to foster. So providing training that any of your fosters can come to opens up the door that they might start thinking, yeah, maybe I'll try a little behavior kitten next time. And they might find that's the most fun thing they've ever done, and you now have a really great behavior kitten foster. The types of duties, this goes to, I really believe that not all organizations, but some organizations don't utilize volunteers enough. Volunteers can do so much more, I think, in some situations than we allow them to do. So if you have that foster parent who really has been with your program a while, they know the ins and outs of your program, is that person maybe someone you can consider to be like your own foster manager assistant, where they can maybe field some of those emails that you get. They can maybe field some of the questions that someone's like, you know, my kitten sneezed 3 times last night. Is that a problem? How many times do you answer that question? Maybe someone who you can really trust, who knows how many times that, you know, sneezing 3 times is or is not a problem, what else is going on, can answer that and take some of those things off of your plate. So maybe bringing in and allowing them to take on more duties within your sheltering environment. Different types of training, kind of talked about that already, and the different types of community involvement, again, like the Facebook groups, but also providing some on-site thank yous and some on-site community involvement, like a pizza party every 6 months or something, or you go bowling together, or you know, whatever that it seems like your foster community might like to do. Okay, did I skip a slide? Sorry, I was looking away. Okay. All right, so paying for it all. So yes, how are we going to take care of these extra animals that now we've extended, we've gone beyond our shelter, along with the theme of this summit. How are we going to pay for these things? So two big ways. You can shift your funding, or you can get new funding. And actually, even if you shift your funding, as your program grows, you might want to get more funding. So let's look at shifting your funding. So what costs can be shared within your shelter or rescue already? Do you have a medical budget already? Do you have a budget already for your shelter or your rescue organization for food for animals? So why do the foster animals, aren't they allowed to have food? They're shelter animals too, right? So can't we just say, well, we have this food budget, can some of it be for foster animals? We have this medical budget, can some of it be for foster animals? And a lot of times you can have that shift in funding. So look at those kind of things. The other thing you can look at is where can costs be minimized? And, excuse me, I'm going to get a sip here. I thought I could make it for the last 5 minutes, but I just couldn't. So minimizing costs, where can you reduce waste, or where can you increase donations? So reducing waste is actually, so quick story and point. Look at what's happening in your shelters and rescues and where you can maybe save some money. I was visiting a shelter. They were cleaning the cages of the adoptable animals. There were 2 kittens in a nice cage. It was clean, it was beautiful, it was all great. The animals were being well cared for. Well cared for, it did sound right to me. And there was this bowl in there. These 2 kittens, they were like 8 weeks old. They were just back and ready for adoption. And there was a bowl in there. It was like Great Dane, at least Labrador-sized bowl. It was huge, like that big. And it was filled with kibble, with just a barely a tiny little divot in it. And the folks there were cleaning the cages. They took that bowl out. They threw all that food away. They put that bowl back in. And now they filled it up with kibble again, and it was heaping. Those kittens were never going to eat all of that food. And this was happening every day in a lot of the cages. There's a big savings in food right there. Similarly, I've seen things with administrative and throwing out file folders, because if you don't throw them out, you can't buy new ones next year. But they still work. They're still fine. Can we save some money that way? And then the donations. We'll talk in other sessions too about ways of getting additional donations. But again, if people know your foster program exists, donations start coming in too. The community wants to help you save animals. And there are lots of ways to get those donations. That's a whole other session that we could possibly do. But one of the things too is kitten showers. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. You can do special events. And I put kitten showers on there. There's all kinds of special events, of course, like Bark in the Park and the 10-mile run and things that you can raise community awareness and funds at the same time. The kitten showers, when we talk, there's a session we'll do later in this summit on kitten nurseries. Kitten showers are one of the things that many organizations have told us they have successfully brought in 80% or more of their entire kitten foster budget just from holding a kitten shower. It's usually a 2 or 3 day event, and it's often tied with an adoption event. So there are these special events I know are hard to put on, and they sometimes cost a lot of money, but kitten showers don't. And that's a real good way to bring in some supplies for what your foster program is going to need. Talked about minimizing costs, and then of course just advocate all the time for your program. Let people know that your program exists. Let people know that they can be part of helping save a life. People want to help. And please use those cute pictures of animals, young animals or old animals, and whoever it is that you're trying to get adopted. Finally, real quickly before we run out of time, there are some creative options that are becoming more and more popular, at least in the States, so I want to share them with you here. Of course, there's foster to adopt programs. If people are thinking, I'm not quite sure, my caution with that, and they're great, just be sure that you're very clear how long does that person have to decide if they're going to foster to adopt. And make sure it's very clear in whatever language you're using and sending, if there's an agreement that you're using with those folks, what's going to happen in how many days for that decision. There's emergency and short-term fostering. This is huge. So a lot of people can't foster for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 months, but sometimes they can foster for 2 days. They have the weekend off, or maybe they're off on a Tuesday and Wednesday, or maybe they're off on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they can take that animal for 24 hours and give the foster coordinator a chance to find an additional foster who could be more long-term. And having a pool of emergency fosters, and you're like, oh my God, it's 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. I've been trying to get out of the shelter for 3 hours now. Who really goes home at 5 o'clock from the shelter, right? We're always there until 8 or 9 or 10. But here, a kitten just came in. We can't leave it there overnight. You can't bring all the animals home with you. Having this pool of emergency fosters for 24, 48 hours is great. Likewise, your current foster parents, something might happen in their lives. All of a sudden, they have to, something happened. They have to go away. You have someone who can take those kittens on very short notice, or those other animals. Sorry, keep going back to kittens. Timeout vacations. This is really nice for the animals who've been in the shelter for a while. They need some time out of the shelter, a nice home environment. That's could be a totally different type of fostering that you offer. The field to foster is when, especially you have foster parents who really know what they're doing, and you know that they can assess the condition of the animal that's going to be brought to them, especially, again, I'm going to go back to kittens as an example. But you might have the animal control officers out in the field. Someone has found 4 2-week-old kittens. that ACO, animal control officer, can call your foster coordinator and say, hey, I'm in this area of town. I've got, what did I say, 4 2-week-old kittens? And do we have a foster who can take them? And that animal control officer can then, through the coordination of the foster manager, take the animals right from where they're found to that foster parent who is skilled and been with the organization for a while, and that person can take the photos and email them into the shelter and get them all set up with whatever is needed electronically from the shelter point of view. And for especially minimizing the time that it will take to get those animals into care and possibly the exposure to other animals by having to make a stop at the shelter can help them with their health. And then finally, a temporary nursery stay. We'll talk about kitten nurseries in a later session. Nurseries are not meant to be where kittens grow up, or puppies for that matter. They're meant to be a temporary stay, and they're based, the most successful ones are based on having a really good, successful foster program first, because they're not going to stay in that shelter, the nursery, very long. They're going to go out to foster care. Okay, so the saying farewell, again, explain to your fosters ahead of time what's going to be expected when they're coming back, and it's okay to give your fosters some time out. If someone has been fostering for 3 litters in a row and they haven't had a decent night's sleep in 3 months, let's give them a little break. We don't want them to run out of time, or run out of time, I'm running out of time. We don't want them to run out of energy. So by letting them take time to recharge, letting them restock, letting them clean their environment for the next animals to come in is going to help keep the next foster animals healthy, and it's going to help keep your foster caregiver having a little bit of a break and being able to recharge. Okay, so there we are. I just want to thank you again for your time and attention. You guys were great. And thank you from the animals who your foster programs will be taking care of. And thanks to Getting to Zero. Oops.